The day my firm closed its biggest account in company history. A $4.2 million contract that took me 14 months to build from a cold email to a signed agreement. My father shook my hand across the conference table like I was a stranger and said, "We couldn't have done it without Monica's leadership." Monica hadn't been in a single client meeting. Let me back up. My name isn't important right now. What's important is that I spent 6 years of my life building something that wasn't mine, and I didn't see it clearly until the night my family sat me down at a dinner table and told me exactly what they thought I was worth. My father started Harmon Financial Consulting 23 years ago out of a spare bedroom in our house in Columbus, Ohio. Back then it was just him, a second-hand laptop, and a philosophy. Help small and mid-sized businesses manage money without the Wall Street attitude. He was good at it, genuinely good. By the time I was in high school, he had 12 employees and a real office downtown with a glass door that had the company logo etched into it. I used to press my fingers against that logo when I was 15 and think, someday. I went to Ohio State for finance, graduated top of my class. My father hired me at 22, and I told myself that was okay. I'd earn my place just like any other employee would. No shortcuts because of the last name. I kept my head down, took the accounts nobody else wanted, worked Saturdays when the rest of the office was already at brunch. Within 3 years, I was managing a client portfolio worth more than any other associate in the building. My older sister, I'll call her by what she always was to me, which is my sister, had also joined the firm. But her path looked different from mine. She had the kind of personality that lit up a room. She remembered everyone's birthday, brought donuts on Mondays, laughed at my father's jokes even when they weren't funny. She wasn't bad at the work, but she wasn't exceptional either. She got by on warmth and family connection in ways that I never let myself lean on. I told myself that was a choice I was making, that I had more integrity. I'm not sure I was right about that anymore. The $4.2 million account was with a regional manufacturing company called Westbrook Industrial. They'd been mismanaged by 3 different consulting firms before they came to us, and they were skeptical of everyone. Their CFO, a sharp woman in her late 50s, spent the first 40 minutes of our initial call essentially interviewing me on why I wasn't going to waste her time. I didn't sell. I just answered her questions. By the end she said, "Okay, let's talk numbers." 14 months later, we had a full-service contract, tax strategy, cash flow management, financial forecasting, the works. It was the largest single account in Harmon Financial's history. My father announced it at the all-staff meeting on a Tuesday morning. He stood up at the front of the conference room and said the firm had reached a major milestone, that we were entering a new phase of growth, and that it was all possible because of the leadership and vision guiding the company. Then he turned to my sister and started clapping. I sat there with my coffee going cold in my hand and watched the whole room join in. Afterward, I pulled my father into his office. I wasn't even angry yet. I was genuinely confused. "Dad," I said, "I built that account. I made every call, attended every meeting. Monica wasn't involved." He looked at me the way he sometimes did, like he was choosing words carefully. "You did great work," he said. "But Monica is the face of this firm's future. People need to see her out front. You understand?" I said I didn't understand. He said, "You will." I went home that night and told my boyfriend he'd been with me through all 6 years of the grind, through the 7 a.m. calls and the weekends lost to spreadsheets. And he sat with me on the kitchen floor of our apartment while I worked through whether I was overreacting. He didn't tell me what to think. He just asked questions. By the time we went to bed, I had decided to give it time, see if it was a pattern or a one-off. It was a pattern. Over the next 8 months, my sister's name started appearing on proposals I had written. Her photo went up first on the redesigned company website. When Westbrook's CFO called to check in on the account I had built, whose every number I knew by memory, she was redirected to my sister's line. When I asked about it, my father said it was about client experience continuity and that my sister was better at the relationship side. When I pointed out that I had the relationship, he looked at me with that same patient, infuriating expression and said the firm needed to move in a strategic direction. I started keeping records, Every proposal with my name removed. Every meeting I ran where my sister got the credit in the follow-up email. Every client introduction where I was listed as support staff. I have a folder on my laptop that's just screenshots and PDFs. I didn't know why I was keeping them at the time. I think some part of me already knew. The dinner happened in November. My parents have a house in Upper Arlington, the kind of Columbus suburb that has good schools and wide streets and neighbors who wave. My mother always cooks a real meal on Sundays. She's the kind of person who sets the table properly even when it's just family, cloth napkins and everything. I had grown up at that table. It had always felt safe. I noticed something was off the moment I walked in. My sister was already there with her husband, which was normal, but the energy in the room was too still. My mother kept moving between the kitchen and the dining room with small tasks that didn't need doing. My father was in his chair with the TV on, but he wasn't watching it. We sat down. My mother served. Nobody said anything real until the plates were half empty, and then my father put down his fork and said, "There's something we need to discuss as a family." He told me that the firm is at an inflection point, that they were thinking about the next 10 years, about succession, about who would eventually take over from him. He said they had made a decision. My sister would be named president of Harmon Financial in January. I waited for the rest of the sentence. There wasn't one. "What does that mean for me?" I asked. My father said the firm needed unified leadership, that having two daughters in senior roles created internal confusion, that he and my mother had discussed it and they felt it was best if I moved into a specialized advisory capacity, which meant, as I understood it over the following few sentences, that I would no longer manage accounts directly. I would support my sister. My mother was looking at her plate. "I built this firm's biggest account," I said. My voice was very even. I'd gotten good at even. "I've spent 6 years. We know what you've done," my father said. "This isn't about your contributions. It's about the future." I looked at my sister. She looked back at me with an expression I couldn't fully read, not triumphant, not guilty, somewhere in between. She said, "It's not personal." I almost laughed. My father said that if I wasn't comfortable with the new structure, he would understand, but that this was the direction the firm was going. He said it gently, the way you might explain to a child that the family was moving to a new city and there was nothing to be done about it. Then my mother looked up from her plate and said, "We just need you to be a team player, sweetheart." I sat with that for a moment. Team player. 6 years, $0.2 million. I put my napkin on the table and pushed my chair back. I said, "I need to think about this." My father started to say something and I said, "I'll call you this week," and I walked out to the car where my boyfriend was waiting. He had waited outside every family dinner for the last 2 years because my parents had never quite warmed to him. Nothing they ever said outright, just the particular chill of people who have decided someone doesn't belong. He took one look at my face and didn't ask anything. He just started the car. I called in sick the next morning. I sat at our kitchen table with a legal pad and I wrote down everything I knew. Every account I managed. Every client relationship that was technically mine, meaning the client knew me, trusted me specifically, had worked with me through problems that my sister had no knowledge of. I wrote down what I had built and what I owned, and what would happen to those things if I left. Here's what I knew that my father did not fully appreciate. 7 of Harmon Financial's top 12 accounts had been brought in by me. Not assigned. Brought in. Cold outreach, referrals I had cultivated, introductions I had made at networking events my father hadn't even attended. Those clients trusted me, not the firm name on the letterhead. Me. I also knew something else. 3 months earlier, a regional advisory firm called Caldwell Partners had approached me at an industry luncheon. Their managing director had said, very casually, that they were looking to expand their Midwest presence and that my name had come up in certain conversations. I had thanked him politely and forgotten about it. I went home that evening and found his card. I emailed him that night. We met for coffee 2 days later. He had a lot to say. Caldwell Partners was well capitalized, had offices in Chicago and Indianapolis, and was looking to establish a Columbus hub. They wanted someone who knew the market, had existing client relationships, and could build a team from the ground up. The role would be Managing Director, Columbus. Salary plus equity stake. Benefits better than anything Harmon had ever offered me. I asked for 2 weeks to think about it. I spent those 2 weeks being very normal at work. I showed up on time. I answered emails. I sat in the meeting where my father announced my sister's promotion to the full staff. I watched people congratulate her and I smiled in the right places. My sister gave a little speech about how much she valued collaboration. I clapped. At home, I was reading my employment contract. Here's the thing about employment contracts at family businesses. Sometimes they don't get updated the way they should. My original contract from 6 years ago had a non-solicitation clause, but it was written narrowly. It covered clients I had been assigned by the firm. It said nothing about clients I had independently originated before being formally assigned. I had flagged this to my father once, years ago, suggesting they update the language. He had said he'd have the attorney look at it and then never followed up. The attorney, it turned out, had never been asked. I had my own attorney by this point. She reviewed everything over a weekend. She confirmed what I thought. She also pointed out that my name appeared on the original pitch documents, proposals, and engagement letters for the accounts I had originated, documents that would make it very clear to any client or any court who had built those relationships. She said I was in a strong position. I called the Caldwell managing director and told him yes. I gave my notice on a Wednesday morning. I walked into my father's office before the rest of the staff arrived, and I put a formal resignation letter on his desk. He read it standing up, still in his coat. He looked at me over the top of the paper and said, "You're making a mistake." I said, "I've thought about it carefully." He said, "Did I understand what I was walking away from? The equity that would have come eventually. The legacy he had spent his whole career building." His voice had the texture of someone who had expected this to be a conversation, who had not prepared for it to already be decided. I said, "I understand exactly what I'm walking away from." I cleaned out my desk by noon. My direct clients received an email from me. Personal, warm, honest, within what my attorney had confirmed was entirely appropriate, letting them know I was moving to a new firm and that I would love to continue working with them if they chose to follow. I didn't pressure anyone. I gave them my direct contact and I left it at that. Within 3 weeks, 4 of the 7 accounts I had originated had formally transferred to Caldwell Partners. Westbrook Industrial was one of them. Their CFO called me directly and said, "I hired you, not a letterhead. Where you go, we go." I started building the Columbus office. Within my first 6 months, I had a team of 4. We closed 2 new accounts that Harmon had also been pitching. I wasn't trying to burn anything down. I was just doing my job, finally, in a place that knew what I was worth. My father called me in February, about 6 weeks after I'd left. I let it go to voicemail. He said he wanted to talk, that there had been some unexpected client transitions he hadn't anticipated, and that he thought maybe they'd moved too fast on the restructuring. He used the word reconsider. I didn't call back that day. My mother called the following Sunday, the kind of call that starts with "How are you doing? We miss you," and ends with "Your father thinks there might be a way to work something out." I listened. I told her I was doing well. I told her I was doing well. I told her I was genuinely happy at Caldwell. She said, "But family is family," in the way that people say it when they want it to mean something it has stopped meaning. I said, "Mom, I love you, but I remember that dinner." She was quiet for a moment. I said, "I need to go. I have a 9 a.m. My sister texted me once, sometime in March. She said she was sorry for how things had played out, that she hadn't realized how much weight I was carrying, that if she could go back she'd have spoken up. I thought about that message for a while. I believed parts of it. I replied that I appreciated her saying so, and that I needed some space. She said she understood. It's been almost a year now. Caldwell Columbus has 8 employees. We just closed the largest account in our regional office's history, a healthcare supply company out of Dayton that was being actively courted by 3 other firms. Their CEO told me afterward that they'd chosen us because I had made them feel like a priority from day one, not an account number. My boyfriend and I got engaged in September, on a Saturday morning in our kitchen. No big gesture. Just him across the coffee table from me saying he'd been thinking about it for a long time and he didn't want to wait anymore. He'd been outside every family dinner, in the car, patient and quiet, and he deserved someone who finally walked out to meet him. My father eventually reached out through my uncle asking if I'd be willing to sit down and talk about a potential referral arrangement between Harmon and Caldwell. Professional, not personal. Clean. I thought about the dinner table, the clock napkins, my mother not looking up from her plate. I thought about the etched logo on the glass door, and the 15-year-old who pressed her fingers against it thinking someday. Someday arrived, it just didn't look the way either of us expected. I told my uncle I appreciated him reaching out and that I wished my father nothing but success, and that the answer was no. I still think about that Sunday dinner sometimes. The cloth napkins, my mother not looking up from her plate, my father's voice, steady and reasonable, explaining to me why the thing I had built wasn't really mine to keep. What strikes me now isn't the anger. The anger burned off a long time ago. What strikes me is how long I had been ignoring what was right in front of me. Every time my name was taken off a proposal, every time a client introduction listed me as support staff, every time my father said "you understand" in that patient tone, I understood nothing, or I chose not to. I kept telling myself that hard work would eventually speak for itself, that integrity was its own reward, that if I just kept my head down long enough the truth would become obvious to everyone. That's not wisdom. That's wishful thinking wearing the costume of virtue. The hardest thing I had to learn was the difference between loyalty and self-erasure. I thought I was being principled by not leveraging the family name, by not asking for what I'd earned, by staying quiet when credit went somewhere else. But principles aren't principles if they only run in one direction. I was holding myself to a standard that nobody else in that room was applying to themselves. That's not integrity. That's just losing slowly and calling it character. What actually saved me wasn't anger. It was clarity. The night after that dinner, sitting at my kitchen table with a legal pad, I stopped asking, "Is this fair?" and started asking, "What do I actually have?" Those are very different questions. The first one keeps you stuck. The second one moves you forward. I had 7 client relationships built from scratch. I had an employment contract with language that had never been updated. I had a business card from a managing director who had said my name was coming up in certain conversations. None of that had appeared out of nowhere. It existed because I had spent 6 years building it, carefully, without being told to. When I finally looked at what I'd actually accumulated, the path forward became obvious. My boyfriend waited in the car through every one of those dinners. 2 years, never once complained about it, never made me feel guilty for asking, never pushed me to force a confrontation I wasn't ready for. That kind of steadiness is rarer than talent and harder to find than opportunity. He saw what was happening before I did and never once said "I told you so." When I walked out to the car that November night, he didn't ask what happened. He just started driving. I think about that a lot. How the people who are actually for you don't require you to perform your pain before they show up. The account we just closed in Dayton is bigger than anything I closed at Harmon. The team I've built is smaller but sharper. My name is on the door, not in fine print at the bottom of someone else's proposal. I don't think my father is a bad person. I think he made choices about what he valued and in what order, and he assumed I would absorb the cost without ever presenting one. What he miscalculated was that cost absorbing has a limit, and that the person doing it had been quietly learning everything she'd need to walk out that door and build something better. The dinner table is still there, I'm sure. The cloth napkins, the careful setting, the particular silence before something hard gets said. I just don't sit at it anymore.